The voice of Husker Nation is on the air. This is Hail Varsity Radio. Insight, opinion, expertise, along with the biggest names talking Nebraska sports. Join in with the show at 402-489-1240 or 1-800-825-5865. Now, here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel.
Great to have you in. Welcome to Thursday. It's Hail Varsity. We're powered by Cornhead Lager. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, Connor Clark. We'll get to the roll call, our starting five, and we've got several photo finish contestants with the StreamYard, Hail Varsity YouTube. Subscribe, follow, check us out online that way. Hear us on the Hail Varsity Radio Network, and can also watch the show and listen on the Hail Varsity Twitter feed at HVarsity Radio. Numbers to get in, 489-1240, 489-1240, 800-825-5865. Can make a phone call that way. Can email Chris at hailvarsity.com. And we are loaded up. Much of the first hour is you. You want to jump in via the stream or on the phone lines, talk some Nebraska basketball, big-time win, big-time gut check, something that's not happened a lot this year, and that's Nebraska was able to conquer adversity as well as a road opponent, 85-70, the win for the Big Red. 2 games up now, over 500 in conference play, a 19th win. We'll talk a little bracketology. Where's Nebraska slated? Bill Bender of the Sporting News going to be with us next hour. He's not only Mr. College Football, but also is doing the bracketology for the men and women tournament projections. So Bill Bender with us. Gary Barnett kicks off hour 2. Danny Burke, Burke's Best Bets in the final hour. Brandon Vogel from Counter Reed with us in about 15, but plenty of room for you. Scott's going to get us going. Scott, thanks for the phone call. Welcome into Hail Varsity. Go for it.
Thank you. How are you folks today?
We're good, man.
Hey, you did know it's National Margarita Day, right?
It is.
Oh,
I will talk to Gary Barnett about margaritas in hour 2, but it is, National Margarita Day.
I'm curious where this call's going to go.
Are you going blended on the rocks, yay or nay on margaritas, Scott?
Oh, blended.
That's the way to go.
Yeah, so anyway, of course, George Washington's birthday, too. Another interesting fact is it would have been in 1945. This is my dad. He was a belly turret gunner on a B-17, and it was their first bombing mission, and they bombed Lunenburg. So anyway, little history lesson.
No, that's fine. Do you want to talk hoops, or what do you want to get into, bud?
And so the comment I want to make about the basketball game last night is Sam Hoiberg. If you watch the last minute and a half of game, I'm a big defensive guy.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't believe what he did on that. He got this guy pinned over on the side. The guy passed the ball off, and he was on the other guy like a dirty shirt, and then he stole the ball.
He had like 3 steals last night, and they were pretty critical.
Well, the stat that's pretty incredible with his performance last night is he was plus 17. When he was on the floor, Nebraska outscored Indiana by 17 points. He had 2 points, and he didn't take a shot. Yeah.
And it was free throws, but that's how impacting this guy is. And I mean, the only other they only had one other guy that was plus 17 on the team, but that was pretty amazing. Those guys, he must have been. They felt like they had a bumblebee on them or something.
Yeah, no, Scott, thanks for the phone call. Appreciate you checking us out and tuning in. Always love your thoughts. And yep, Sam Hoiberg is that spark of energy. He is that heartbeat for Nebraska. You've got so many characters with Nebraska. Scott brought up margaritas. Yay or nay on margaritas tonight?
I love a good margarita. Am I going to have one tonight?
I'm not
Likely
opposed.
not.
What'd you say, Connor?
I'm not opposed.
Like, how am I gonna like the one problem with margaritas? They give me bad heartburn, but I have my heartburn pills at home, my omeprazole.
Okay.
Just pop one of those and get a couple margaritas. I mean, that wouldn't be too bad. Maybe I'll save it for this weekend though.
See, my wife, whenever we go out, we have a favorite Mexican restaurant. I'll get a blended with salt strawberry margarita.
I prefer mine on the rocks.
She has some choice words for me. Drinking a blended strawberry margarita. We can't repeat them on the air.
See, my thing with the margarita is is we have things to do tonight. We have the Average Joe Sports Show, which
Yes.
we're going to be recording. No free shout-outs, but that's us, so I'll give ourselves a free shout-out. We're going to be recording that tonight. I have responsibilities. I don't want to follow in the Scott Frost.
Should we see how many shots Tequila, Dolman, and Mitch can take?
I would love to see that as somebody who's been a student of Dolman multiple times. I would be here for that.
Welcome back. It's the Average Joe Show.
as we say, Huskers, take a drink. So, yeah, but Scott got it kicked off. You have thoughts on Nebraska's win last night. Guys, were you among the many in Husker Nation that were ready to break your TV? Were you in that, oh, here we go again situation around the 11-minute mark where it turned from 22-point lead early in the second half to, oh, dear God, Indiana just hit a 3 from the corner. It's 59-56, and the mayor burns a timeout, and we have some Fred audio we'll get to. But they responded. They have found ways to lose basketball games, too, specifically Rutgers and Minnesota. Those would look great in the win column on the road, especially now. Instead, they were missed opportunities. Were you betting they're going to absolutely blow it? There's going to be a meltdown. And, I mean, Husker Twitter erupted. First half, everyone's high-fiving. Social media was aglow. Everyone was smiling about Nebraska basketball, and you should. You go whack Indiana by 20 on the road. You looked incredible. But how about Nebraska's guts? I mean, think about it. I mean, this is the third time at the plate where you kick someone's butt on the road, you let them back in, and they never lost the lead. But it felt like it. All right, it felt like it. It felt like they went from being up 22 to being down 10.
I mean, you hit that. Sorry, continue.
No, and it was for them after these PTSD moments to battle back. And what was the total run? Was it 14-3?
14-2 run.
14-2 run. That was their response. And to Scott's point, a lot of that was Sam Hoiberg. Bryce Williams was incredible.
I mean, how about the balls to go hit that long mid-range jumper to kind of stim it? I think it was 22-3 or something like that. The run at that point.
Jamarcus was money.
And that Illinois was on, and then Bryce just comes down and calmly steps into a long mid-range two and absolutely sinks it and at least gets something going for the Husker offense, allows them to see something go through the net. As you said, it broke the ice. I mean, that was probably the 9-ish minute mark of that game. And like to speak to like the point in that game, like at the 10-minute mark, I needed to find a lower stress activity, so I threw one in the chamber and played Russian roulette, and it felt less stressful. I kid.
Wow.
Like, but that was the point you were at, because it just felt like the Husker offense, like they came out of halftime, they had that beautiful lob play from Casey to Bryce Williams, and it felt like that was the only thing they drew up at halftime. Like they drew up the lob play and went, all right, cool, we're done. They took their foot off the pedal. You heard the Indiana student section booing their own team. Like, that game felt over, and the Huskers kind of checked out for about an 8-minute stretch where there was just nothing going. And then you see one go through the hoop with Bryce Williams. The team starts to get it clicking, and luckily you skate your way to a victory on thin ice. You do it, and that's all that matters at this point. With all the voodoo that's been going on with Husker basketball on the road, the fact that you get one done, you were going to face adversity. That should have been expected last night from Husker fans and from the team because of how things have been going on the road. You should have expected that adversity. I think it speaks to Nebraska and some of the strides they've made over the past couple of weeks. I know Indiana's not the best team in the Big Ten.
Also, we're going to shoot like that for 40 minutes, too.
It speaks to how this team has made some strides. They're not perfect by any means, but they made some strides to be able to weather that storm. Because you think back to the Minnesota game at the beginning of the Big Ten slate, kind of the same story. You jump out to a lead, you think it's over with, Minnesota starts getting hot in the second half, and you let it slip away. Last night, same thing happened. Indiana starts to get hot, nothing's going through the hoop for you, but you don't let it slip away. That's at least a step forward in the right direction. What does it lead to? Your first road conference win, which is big for the Husker tournament resume.
Big in February, and you didn't fold, right? And I think there's a lot of us that on the road, they have shown the ability to fold, not quit, but the spark goes out, the lights go out. And during that 8-9 minute stretch, they took some questionable shots. I never saw guys a lack of toughness. They were always locked in. They were always pretty gritty around the paint. I think Indiana's a good matchup for them because I think Indiana's a softer team. Well, they are. They're not. They're soft. It's not that they're not athletic or talented, but they're soft. And Nebraska was the bully last night, and he didn't get much from Rink scoring wise. But Alec, I mean, every time that guy dribbles, bless his soul, I'm worried for Fred. Okay, but Alec made some great plays, and that's who he stuck with. Guys in the paint there. That's who he went with, and Alec paid off. He took another the no yes as he shot from the corner for three. But team effort last night, pretty awesome if you're a Nebraska fan.
I think last night, and the more I think about it, is a pretty big coaching win for Fred Hoiberg because you go back and I watched the highlights yesterday of the last Indiana game, and you saw some glaring issues with Indiana. And the one that came to mind, first of all...
Just ask Dockich.
Well, yeah. The first thing that I saw...
coming off the top rope, baby. Go ahead. Sorry.
Was the matchup between Tominaga and Cups. Gabe Cups could not guard Tominaga in that first one. He could not guard Tominaga last night. You saw that in the first half. They switched Galloway onto him, and you saw so much attention go to Casey, rightfully so. The dude was scorching hot. And that allows other things to open up. You mentioned Alec. He had 7 points. He had a big three, had a big and one in that second half as well. And then this team with Nebraska, and I know this is talent-wise too, but you're going to be hard to beat when you make 14 threes. Yeah. And by the way, you had 4 guys in double figures. Gary had 15.
He's been playing so well.
Williams had 18. Tominaga had 20, but I think the number that sticks out the most is Lawrence's 19, to go along with 6 rebounds and 5 assists.
How confident
he was the
Lawrence?
X factor.
Big time. And he took good shots. He was in rhythm. He was comfortable. And that speaks to Fred knowing his personnel. That speaks to Fred making the switch to bring him off the bench. Well, and he's more comfortable and he's more confident.
And you watch with Jamarcus Lawrence, like, one of the big differences I've seen over the past couple weeks, and it sounds simple, there's better basketball minds than me that can probably diagnose this a little bit better, but he's been getting some good looks at three, knocking him down, and then just how much that opens up the floor for him to get to the rim. That's what I've noticed from Jamarcus Lawrence is he has confidence when he gets to the rim. He isn't driving into a crowded lane. I think part of that comes down to his shooting. I think also coming off the bench, it's a bit of a credit to C.J. Wilcher's shooting as well, that teams have had to really face guard him, get in tight into his grill, open up a little bit more space in the lane. The difference in Jamarcus Lawrence on the offensive end has been both confidence and, for some reason, a better sense of when to drive it in amongst the trees and get to the rim.
We'll do our shout-outs. We'll sneak in a phone call. Brandon Vogel, counter read. We'll talk some football and, of course, Husker hoops with him. Mike checks in at 3:40, quoting Herb Brooks. Great moments are born from great opportunity. Jeff is in. Andrew is in. This looks a lot like the Big Ten middle class, and what I mean by that, everybody got in at 3:40. You're all winners. Unfortunately, I'm not Oprah. Photo finish it is. Black
Nobody
Hills,
gets
Brennan.
a car, sorry.
Nobody gets a car. You still get to hear your name. Andrew is in. Brennan, Jeff. Also, NU Grandpa is in with that. And Brennan's like, look, I'll make the ruling. I think you're all winners. I'm copping out. Forgive me.
You all get your participation trophies.
Yep, there we go.
It's America in 2024.
You get a ribbon. Brandon checks in. Andrew says, I swear, anytime I watch Nebraska basketball, they play like poo. But when I don't watch, they do just fine. I don't get
quit
it.
watching.
And apparently Andrew didn't watch the final 11 minutes or so. Who's with us?
We have Tom on the line.
Tom, what's up? Thanks for calling.
Hey, Schmitty. To paraphrase Dolman, the sky's a little bluer, the sun's a little brighter, and the grass just might be a little bit greener today than it was yesterday.
It was nice. You've been going to Nebraska games for a long time, Tom, and did you have panic last night about the 11-minute mark?
Oh, cripe. When it got to 59-56, I turned it off, and I told myself, I've heard this before. I'm not going to listen to them lose. So I went to bed, and, of course, I couldn't sleep and got up and caught it at the 4-minute mark, and they were up by 10 or 12, and then Indiana hit a 3, so I shut it back off. And with about a minute left in the game, I turned it back on, and
oh my goodness,
they were safe.
Even they were up 12 with a minute to go, and it's like, how is this going to melt down? I'm sorry, that thought bubble happened.
It wasn't until Bryce Williams got up and rejected what's his name.
Sweet.
That got me off my couch at home, and that's the moment where I went, all right, they're good.
I just hope that it carries over.
Well, I mean, this place is going to be nuts on Sunday. It's sold out. It's going to be 70 degrees. The rail yard will be full of beer, and then we tip off at 5:30.
The game's secondary.
Yeah, well, we as in Nebraska, the Nebraskans tip off. Tom, you take care. We'll see you Sunday.
Yep, thanks a lot. You bet.
There he is. Tom checks in. Tom's been going for quite a while. And Brando Sports, Husker basketball back on the map, baby. We're coming for it all. We will get into that question with Vogues. We were all pulling our hair out a little bit with Nebraska basketball. Do you feel like they're safe? And I know what fan base I'm asking. Where bad things have happened when you've gotten your hopes up.
Husker PTSD?
Yes, and a lot of sports, but specifically basketball. And that's not Fred's baggage. He's done a great job. So, do you feel safe after last night? Do you feel like, okay, good things can happen after a decade in the wilderness of NCAA tournament misses? Brandon Vogel's next. Counter read on Hail Varsity.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Thanks for spending time. Hail Varsity continues, powered by Cornhead Lager, Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, Connor Clark. Find us on the YouTube channel, Hail Varsity YouTube. Find us on Twitter at HVarsity Radio. Find Brandon Vogel at counterread, counterread.com. Vogues, choice words, broken remotes, or just pour another drink. It's going to be okay. 11-minute mark last night.
In the press box for football games. You know, I'm Tom Osborne the whole way.
You're hammering that big red. You're working your jaw.
Yep. No, in some ways, like I think that's obviously it's a big deal for Nebraska to get his first Big Ten road win. For the way that it happened, I think is probably a little bit better than if Nebraska had just held its halftime lead, because not only did they vanquish the road dragon, they also had to vanquish the Nebraska dragon. And credit to them for doing it. We've seen a couple of other games go the opposite way, and I'm sure we'll talk about kind of where this leaves Nebraska over the remaining four, where it leaves them in terms of the NCAA tournament. Really big win, even though Indiana, is a program, I guess, or a team at least in a little bit of disarray at the moment. Still, for Nebraska, in a year where they hadn't won on the road in the Big Ten and where few teams are winning on the road in the Big Ten, pretty big one for the Huskers.
Brandon, do you think it's indicative of anything that for one of the first times I can remember, I look around the room here and you on the stream, we're all wearing collared shirts, which is interesting. Connor's kind of on the line. It's a quarter zip collar, but I think that kind of speaks to the celebration that there is today in Husker Nation getting a road win. We're all wearing collared shirts. We're all looking our best.
We've showered and we've combed our hair.
I think so. Nebraska basketball looking pretty good. It puts a little extra spring in your step. It makes it feel like anything's possible. So get a little bit dressed up, so to speak, and see what happens.
Wear your best on Selection Sunday.
You got to get dressed up to go to the dance.
Be careful with your words.
That was a good little
something like that.
Got to get dressed up to go to the dance. Yeah.
Vogues, is Nebraska? Do you feel like Nebraska's safe now? Not safe from a field of 68 standpoint, but just safe from themselves.
Oh, well, I feel safer about a field of 68 than I do about safer from themselves right now. If the season ended today, Nebraska would be in. I'm glad you asked. Go to counterread.com and sign up, because tomorrow's newsletter is largely about this. But over at the Bracket Matrix, as of today, they are in 104 of 106 brackets. team rankings, and I mentioned this number to you guys, I think back towards the start of the month when Nebraska was still showing up and some bracketology stuff, but team rankings gave them, I think, about a 9% chance of getting in. They're now at 77%. And what they need to do realistically, I think, over the last 4 is go 2-2. They get to 21 wins. I think they're going to be in. And obviously you'd have the Big Ten tournament after that, where you could probably not hurt your stock, but potentially help it. So they're in a pretty good spot. And I tell you what, Penn State knocking off Illinois certainly helps Nebraska. Illinois still got to play Purdue. I don't know what the rest of their schedule is. I think they have Iowa twice, maybe. But Nebraska's 2 losses out of second place in the Big Ten right now, tied for 5th. So there's a bunch of teams that are right there, but you get into the top 3 or 4 in the Big Ten, like it becomes pretty hard to leave a team like that out.
Well, and Brandon, given that, do you not feel, maybe this is my own personal bias speaking, and if that is the case, call me on it. I will not be offended. But whenever you look around, Nebraska's pretty universally a 10 seed in the NCAA tournament. Occasionally they're a 9, but 10 seems to be the universal number right now. Based on what this team does whenever it's on, and you have to account for the road losses as well, but whenever this team is on, do they not feel like closer to a 7 seed than a 10 seed? 10 feels low, and I understand that you have to account for the fact that this team has just been awful on the road. But 10,
yeah,
10 given the quality of the team that we have seen so far this year, does not seem to be fair. It seems to be a 10 seed that no 7 seed would probably want to get.
Yeah, I would agree with that broadly. I think that goes back to, is Nebraska safe from itself, which is the piece I'm less sure about than are they in the tournament at this point. And that's something that can get sorted out a little bit, I think, over the remaining 4. Nebraska will probably be favored in 3 of those games. Certainly the 2 home games, probably not Ohio State, but probably still Michigan. We'll see. We've got a couple of weeks to go. But it's just, it's what do you do with a team that, when it's at its best, is probably safely a 7. When it's not, it's maybe closer to a 12. Well, you maybe get close to splitting the difference at 9 or 10. And I think that's kind of how Nebraska is viewed.
Brandon, a phrase that has come to my mind about this team, and you just kind of see it through the box scores, is they're beautifully inconsistent. And that means when one guy's on, another guy's off. When C.J. Wilcher isn't shooting the ball well, Jamarcus Lawrence is right now. What do you make of that moving forward with this team?
It helps them over I think the rest of their regular season schedule. Like they're a team that can win different ways, and that's usually a pretty good mark of decent quality. You get into the NCAA tournament, and we can talk about if Nebraska ends up as a 10, what 7 wants to face them, or however that breaks out. But I kind of look at, you get to the tournament, that's the point where you need your best players to play well. So it works for now. It's gotten them where they are. If Nebraska does indeed make the NCAA tournament, it's at that point where you'd maybe like a little more certainty out of your best parts, for lack of a better term.
Beautifully inconsistent. I just want to take a moment, Connor. Love that phrase. It could be used to describe Husker basketball. I think it could be the future title of your terrible self-help book. Beautifully inconsistent.
Yeah. I didn't know you were going to be an author. We've got a guy on the show right now that is an author, with John Cook.
Brandon, have you considered writing a self-help book called Beautifully Inconsistent? I think the title works. I'm not sure what the content would be, but sometimes you just have to start with the title.
Yeah, sometimes you do have to start with the title, and I haven't yet, but depending on how busy Connor Clark is over the next couple of minutes, I might go ahead and try and start eating up the Twitter handles. And,
I've already trademarked it.
URLs for that.
Well, Vogues, I want to go to college football for a moment. 7+5, that's where the college football world is at. We'll see how things move towards 14. I want to get your take here about the path to the playoff for Nebraska, and I think you hit on a key point in your latest column, Encounter Read, with the home record, my friend.
Well, that would be a heck of a starting place. Nebraska if I'm remembering the numbers, they went 4-3 at home in 2018. It's the last time they had a winning record at home.
Does that just blow you away? And it's been
or
did they
go 4-3 this year as well?
I don't know.
They haven't gone better than 4-3 since 2018. They've only gone undefeated at home 3 times, I think, this century. 2001, 2012, which ended in a Big Ten championship game appearance, and then 2016, which was one where Nebraska kind of had the schedule for that, for lack of a better term, in 2016, and that's it. And you look at this, sort of my jumping off point for that newsletter you referenced was Action Network put out its home field advantage for 2024. And generally when you look at a spread, you can figure it counts about 2.5 points for home field advantage just for the home team. That's kind of the baseline. They evaluate Nebraska's right now going into 2024 at 1.5. Which ranks 120th nationally. And that's based on the past 10 years of results, the last 10 years of results against the spread, which is a way to measure what is a team underperforming expectation? Is it overperforming? And Nebraska has consistently kind of underperformed at home based on that method. And I kind of got into some of my theories as to why that's the case. But 2024 would be a great year to test this theory out, because Nebraska does have a home schedule where you look at it and you say, yeah, maybe, yeah, if they're as good or probably better than kind of the baseline expectation, and a couple bounces go your way, it's not unthinkable that they win out at home. And that's the best pathway to getting Nebraska back to where it wants to be.
The one shame about that is that here in Nebraska, you can't bet on Nebraska during home games. So, that research, it's not going to help Nebraskans make any money, unfortunately, unless you could drive across the river.
There's always that. There's always the old trip across the river for financial gain.
That's what most people do. They go to Kentucky to go make some money.
Yeah, let's be careful. They hear us on our lovely affiliate 590.
Council Bluffs.
Yes. Elijah Herbel, everybody. Vogues, what's keeping you busy? What are you working on here with Counter Read? And tell folks about Counter Read.
Yeah, as I mentioned, kind of looked at some of the latest projections for Nebraska basketball and where they're at in terms of the NCAA tournament. It's a positive picture for now. We still know that there's 4 games to go, but things are starting to look up there. Beyond that, dig into some of this playoff stuff. I think next week I did a long look back at what this model 5+7 would have been for the previous 10 years if they were at 12 teams. And I guess we got to contend with the idea of 14 or 16 in 3 short years. So that's a weird one too. I'm not quite sure what to make with that. So I'll probably puzzle that out over the week ahead. But you can find all that forthcoming stuff and all of our past stuff at counterread.com.
That is awesome. You got to figure they're trying to fish a little bit, 14 or 16 for what does that equal payday-wise? What does that equal from can there be 4 or 5 of the Big Ten SEC top 4, top 5 get in, and then everybody else? So that might be why we're talking a little sooner rather than later about a 14 or a 16. Vogues, we will talk to you Saturday morning. Thanks again for the time today.
Thanks, guys. Have a good one.
There he is, Brandon Vogel from his football office. Open phones till 5. Gary Barnett, Bill Bender, Danny Burke, Hour 2, 489-1240. We're powered by Cornhead Lager.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Open phones here till 5, 489-1240, 800-825-5865. We'll get into just where Nebraska's at right now beyond the bracketology, but just you as a Nebraska fan, back to that safe and comfort level. Did last night make a difference? I mean, and Vogues nailed it. Not only that they won on the road, but the way they did it, and maybe that is a difference maker for him come next week in Columbus, maybe when it's that season finale, and the mother of all torpedo jobs could be a loss at Michigan. You have a tough ball game with Minnesota. You have a tough ball game with the Rutgers crew coming in. I mean, everybody Nebraska faces on the schedule right now is beatable, but I still think Nebraska has the ability to lose, and I'm not trying to pee on anyone's parade. I promise you, it's just there's just a trust issue that they have earned, and it's problematic. Now, last night was great, but not many teams blow a 22-point lead down to 3 and hang on in road venues on the Big Ten. A reminder real quick about your friends at Dyer Law, workers' compensation. You confused about the options you have for workers' compensation? Put your trust in the team at Dyer Law to help ensure that your rights are protected and you get the settlement you deserve. Call Dyer today at 402-393-7529 or visit Dyer.law to chat with a trusted professional about your workers' compensation claim. That's Dyer.law, 402-393-7529. This team's on the doorstep of 20-plus wins.
Yeah, and you would think 20-plus wins means you're into the NCAA tournament. And it's funny because you listen around to some of the bracket experts, people that do this for a living, and do they not all feel a lot more confident about Nebraska than people around here do?
Yeah.
And it speaks to the Husker PTSD, but I think it
loves them.
They do.
Well, BTN loves Big Ten teams. That's what
but they love Nebraska.
They've seen them, and they've seen who Nebraska has beaten in conference. And it's not that they've eked out some last-second buzzer beaters. They've drilled teams that are in the field. They've drilled the number 2 seed overall in this tournament, depending on if you go with UConn or go with Purdue as your top team overall. They looked like Illinois, air quote, good last night. So what's their consistency going to be like the next 4 and beyond? I think you feel pretty good, although Minnesota will have something to say. They play better than a lot of teams on the road.
By the way.
Yeah, they're Rutgers?
No, they have Purdue. Let me double check. I just saw
They
it.
just played Purdue, I think. But point is Nebraska has done a lot of work.
Ohio State.
Yeah, done a lot of work at home. I think Ohio State, they had their new, let's go win one for the assistant or the interim guy bump. You see that. Do they keep this groove? Because apparently they're, a chance to play themselves in. I don't believe that.
That either.
I don't believe that.
But that's kind of the conversation that needs to be had is you do have the name on the front of the jersey carries some weight in college basketball.
That's why Sparty's safe this year.
Exactly.
They have no business being a lock with most projections.
And from the eye test, from somebody who's watched damn near every Husker basketball game this year, I think this team should be a lock for the NCAA tournament. That's what I was saying earlier with Vogel. I think based on what I have seen, eye test-wise, the road record, I understand, is a big, big red flag with this team. But based on what I have seen, I think this team is a lock, and I think this team is closer to a 7 seed than they are a 10 seed. That being said, the name on the front of the jersey means something, and that's where the Husker PTSD comes in that if Nebraska were to go lose 3 of their final 4 games, you get really, really nervous about this team being able to make it into the tournament, even though I think if this team went and lost 3 of its last 4, there'd be a couple, or at least one quad 3 loss in there, which wouldn't be good. That'd be the first one. But you also look at it and say, only one quad 3 loss on the season. For most teams in the country that play in a conference like the Big Ten or the Big 12 or the SEC, Pac-12, Big East, one quad 3 loss with a plus 500 record in quad 2 and 3 quad 1 wins against, including against a team that's going to be a number 1 seed in the NCAA tournament. You look at that and you go, that's a resume that gets a team in 98% of the time. And it's kind of shocking to me Nebraska's a 10 seed, but again, the name on the front of the jersey does mean something to the selection committee, whether you like it or not.
Here's why Nebraska's a 10 seed, and here's why I agree with it. Yes, the name on the front of the jersey carries some weight, and, Nebraska looks a little bit different than, say, Villanova on the front of the jersey, just as an example. But when going into last night, and your conference road record is 0-7, and you're minus 13.5 on average in those losses, the committee looks at that. The metrics look at that. You saw how far Nebraska jumped after winning last night by 15 on the road. It was a huge bump. They are top 40 in KenPom and net, which are the two biggest metrics out there. They're at 38 in both of them now. But they also equally as punish you for losing all those games. And guess where the NCAA tournament's played? Besides the regional in Omaha. Not in Nebraska.
Technically not at home
so,
either.
that is a big problem. Now, can they improve their seeding? Absolutely. Can they win these next 4 games? I think so. The one game, personally, for me that I would consider being an okay loss is Minnesota. But you get them at home. You need your revenge. You can't afford a loss. I don't think you really want that.
It's an elimination game.
You want nothing to do with that quad 3 loss. I know having just one is whatever, but if you can stay flawless in those bottom 2 quadrants, that's gonna boost you big time.
I'll just leave it at this, though. Back to Schmidt's point about Sparty. If Michigan State had the exact same resume as Nebraska this year, exact same.
They have a worse resume except strength of schedule.
Exactly. If you were to put the Michigan State jersey on the Husker players this year and run them out there and it's the exact same results, I think that Michigan State team is locked. They're not on the bubble.
No, they're out. They're absolute. If you switch jerseys.
Oh yeah, if you switch jerseys and have Nebraska wearing the current Michigan State, like that Michigan State
out.
team's on the bubble or out.
They have a couple of really cool wins. They've got a lot of. Wow, that was a great game, but they lost by 11 losses. And they just got beat at home, for the love of God, by Iowa. Now, Iowa's making a late charge. Rutgers has made a late charge. And Minnesota's made a great late charge. All that said, Nebraska's still in front of them pace car-wise. And when we talk about what seed, where is Nebraska at? Listen, they're not Dayton. They're not an 11. They're probably at a 10. I could be talked into an 8 or a 9. And if we want to talk 7, okay, 7 seeds may lose or get blown out on the road to a Maryland, a team in the bottom tier. But 7 seeds don't typically have 3 really bad losses where you've led by double digits in all 3. And only one of them ended up going to overtime. That's the problem here, is Nebraska's trustworthiness, okay? And they took a big step last night, finally getting it handled on the road. I want to see them handle. I want to see them go win at Ohio State.
I want to see them go win at both.
Right.
I think we need to see them go win.
And that's why I've kind of been stumping, and this isn't to put added pressure or again, pee on a parade. But I want to see them win out because they are better. They are better than the teams behind them.
23-8 looks pretty good.
Yeah, that's awesome. We'll wind down hour 1. Coach Barnett on the way. Some bracketology with Bill Bender of the Sporting News. It's Hail Varsity, powered by Cornhead Lager.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
So Elijah's making an argument with some of these teams that are 7 seeds. I mean, the SEC's loaded this year. They're with the Big 12, where they're going to get 9, maybe 10 in. And you're kind of pointing out South Carolina and who else?
South Carolina, Florida, Michigan State is listed as 7 seed. So I don't think you can even use the argument of the SEC is a better basketball conference right now, which it probably is.
Oh, it's absolutely this year.
But like these teams have some terrible road losses too. I mean,
You're talking about the amount, not the opponent.
What do you? I mean,
like they got rolled by a ranked team by 30.
Yes.
I mean, Bama beat South Carolina by almost 30. Auburn beat South Carolina by 30, or by 40. 101-61. LSU, who is not good, beat South Carolina. And I know LSU had a big win a couple of nights ago, but they're still barely above 500 against Kentucky. Like, there's a couple bad road losses.
They also got the win at Tennessee.
the one credit to South Carolina is they are above 500 on the road. They're 5-3, so that's good for them. But then you look at Florida. Florida's sub 500 on the road. They lost to Virginia 73-70. They lost to Baylor on the road. They lost to Wake Forest on the road. They got rolled.
It's a schedule.
They got rolled by freaking Ole Miss.
That's the issue I'm having. All of those are good teams.
Ole Miss rolled them. Ole Miss.
So do you count K-State as a good team?
Not right now. They're 15-11.
Yeah, and they have not used that momentum against the Kansas win.
I'll say 2 road losses in the SEC are a little different than 2 road losses to Iowa and Maryland by a combined 45 points.
I mean, Texas A&M beat Florida. Texas A&M isn't a great squad. They're right on the bubble.
They're an 11 seed in a lot of spots. Do we have time for Fred?
Yes.
Okay, Fred, at that timeout, that moment in time that was crucial, it was pandemonium. It was a 3-point lead that used to be 22. Here's Fred, how it got flipped around.
Well, the thing I reminded them at that timeout, I saw a little bit of deer in headlights at that under 12 timeout. The thing I said, fellas, here's the reality of the situation. I said, before the game, if you would have said we had a lead at the under 12 media timeout in the second half, I think we probably would have taken it. So let's get it back, get our poise, get our composure, and then I think Sam made a big steal for us to get it going, and then Jamarcus just made play after play after play for us down the stretch. Bryce made some big defensive plays. Josiah, I thought, was active all over the place. Jawan all game long. Rink as a facilitator. I think everybody that stepped on the floor made a positive impact for us. And the thing that I was most pleased with, that place was electric. It got rolling in there, and we found a way. We had not done that. At Minnesota, we let a big one slip away. Rutgers in the second half, we let it slip away. So, to find a way to build that thing back up and respond with a 7-0 run to push it back to double figures was huge. And, the guys held on and made enough plays down the stretch, and a lot of it was due to this guy.
This guy was Jamarcus Lawrence sitting next to Fred at the podium last night. Nebraska's played 6 to 8 games versus tournament teams. They're 50-50 against him. That from Brandon in the stream. Hail Varsity YouTube. Subscribe, like it, and watch the show that way. So you're talking the quad wins and opponents, Connor. That's one thing in Sparty's favor that also goes in that strength of schedule. I can't bark at Michigan State's strength of schedule, but you got to win some of them.
It just the metrics, especially net, and the committee value that so much. That's why it's hard to go against it. And I know, I get it. It's Michigan State. You're going to see Spartans on the front of their jersey. You're going to see Tom Izzo on their sideline. Yes, that absolutely helps their case. The strength of schedule is something that gets weighed in a lot. They do have some good wins. Remember, they beat the crap out of Baylor earlier this year. Mm-hmm. I know it's one game, but it's just an example. I think they're still a tournament team.
They are. I don't think they get in. They will get in if it comes down to Michigan State and Nebraska. But I don't think they necessarily should.
The voice of Husker Nation is on the air. This is Hail Varsity Radio. Insight, opinion, expertise, along with the biggest names talking Nebraska sports. Join in with the show at 402-489-1240 or 1-800-825-5865. Now, here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel.
Back into it at Hail Varsity, powered by Cornhead Lager. Let's talk college football. We welcome in Hall of Fame coach with Colorado and Northwestern. We say hi to Gary Barnett. Coach, how was the weekend? How's the week been? Good to spend some time with you.
Yeah, appreciate that, Chris. No, it's been nice down here. Lots of, been pretty warm, not hot yet. So it's a little rain. We had a couple nights of rain. So we're moving right along. We've had a good winter.
I talked to Uncle Charlie, Coach McBride, and when he was down in Arizona, he'd go rattlesnake hunting. Do you ever bump into any snakes with an errant shot, or at least somebody in your foursome that you had any snake encounters?
Well, we have a lot of snakes here. I mean, there are a lot of snakes. People think that there's one every 10 feet. In reality, I actually talked to a guy. He says there's about one per acre. Yeah, we see them on the golf course. I've never had an encounter where one has tried to strike me, but I've been close enough to where it's scared the snot out of me. And, it's just real sudden. It happens. And, you see them all the time. I used to be deathly afraid of snakes. Actually, I've become desensitized down here because I see them quite often, and I don't get real close, but I get close enough to see how beautiful these things really are. But I have great respect for them, and so I don't mess with them. But I'm not nearly as frightened as I used to be.
You and Indiana Jones, right? I mean, just
yeah, right. No, I ain't doing that either.
Well, good. You have snakes in Arizona. You have gators down in Florida. you got to mess with. So let's get your thought on the new 7+5 setup for the college football playoff. It makes a ton of sense. What do you think here of path to the playoff for everybody else not in the SEC or Big Ten?
Well, it's a path, like you said. It's going to be, and it'll be a while before one of these teams really gets by one of the powerhouses. But I guess it's what everybody wants. It's still going to be the same teams, and it's still going to be the same programs, and we're just going to lengthen it. I mean, you think about if you have, what are you going to have? 4 home games in the first round. Well, those are 4 games that could have been bowl games that aren't going to be bowl games. So, there's going to be 4 bowls that are going to get hurt. Secondly, and I haven't read this, you may know, but so you play the first round, you lose. Can you still go to a bowl game after that? Now, it'd have to be a real late bowl game, but do one of these bowls, New Year's Day bowls, slot in the winner or loser of one of those 4 home games? I don't know. But it does look like to me it's going to impact the bowls because just as it stands right now, you wouldn't have any team in a bowl that's ranked lower than 13. And I don't know. There's always the unintended consequences. We're going to find out what it is. And, of course, we sit around trying to speculate what it might be. But that's the first thing that jumped out to me is that, traditional bowl games that we all love on New Year's Day and, the night before or whatever, we're going to lose those. And it's not that I say college football is going to lose them. We're going to lose the excitement around them and the impact of them. The bowls will probably still stay intact, and the charities will survive. But you think about it, any bowl that's going to be played other than the 4 home games and then the 4 games that get played after that in a bowl, there's not going to be anybody in bowl games, that's ranked higher than 13. So,
I'm wondering,
lower than 13.
How do you think your team would react if they get bounced in the playoff? It's more practice, it's live action, but from a morale standpoint, we always talk about who wants to be in X, Y, or Z bowl game. If you go to a bowl or have an opportunity after you get bounced out of the playoff, do you think teams will react okay?
Yeah, I don't know. No, who knows? But that's all part of growing up. I mean, it's not an easy path. Growing up and becoming a person, and so these sort of things happen, and you deal with them. You learn to deal with them. It's part of life. So I don't know. I guess we'll have to see what that's like. But we've certainly got that problem now, and somehow we're finding ways to. We talk about it, but there's not much you can do about it. So we find ways to deal with it.
Do you like the fact they're already talking about 14 teams when you just got 12 settled?
I don't know. I mean, if you're going to have, you might as well go to 20. I mean, it's going to be like a basketball tournament.
Sure, and you keep some of those bowls around too. Good.
Yeah. Could be. Could. I don't know. I'll have to do more research on what 14 looks like, but certainly the bigger bowls that have always had the better teams, it looks like to me they're gonna struggle now.
Gary Barnett's with us, Hail Varsity Radio, Colorado, Northwestern, Missouri. And, Coach, what would your non-conference philosophy be? This came up with Coach Rule. He was on Reese Davis's podcast and also asked about it this week. I love playing you guys every year. I like that Oklahoma's on the schedule, but it may not be long for this world if you just increase your conference games the way the Big Ten has expanded, the way the Big 12's expanded. You have good games now within conference. You can pretty much guarantee a good matchup every week.
Yeah, that's true. And I do think that it's I think with the 12-team playoff as well and the conference expansion, that it's going to make games like ours, even though in reality, neither one of us are contending for any kind of a playoff situation, not even a bowl. Yeah. So, I think that's a discussion to have later on when we both get better and we both are viable. Right now, neither one of us are viable, but to two teams that are viable, it's interesting because I think the regular season doesn't have quite the same impact now as it did on the really good teams. Mm-hmm. So, you might find yourself, more willing to schedule lesser opponents because, it doesn't mean that much either way. So, but if you play a good team and you lose, maybe that's what you do is you play more good teams early, and if you lose, but you still have a chance to get in the playoffs. So maybe it's going to help it a little bit. It sounds like I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth, but I'm thinking as I'm talking here. So, the regular season games are going to be not quite as important to the playoff picture as they have been. So there may be more risk being taken early on to play good opponents.
Well, and that's something that Trev Alberts was talking about this week on his AD show, and Petiti is making sure, the TV guy, of course, how do you keep the regular season meaningful? You and I love March Madness, Coach, but we just don't pay that much of attention to college basketball if it's not the Buffs or Nebraska's, regular season. The regular season in college basketball, wake me up when it's March, right? So we can enter a pool. You don't want college football to turn into that with this expanded playoff. And, I'm interested here in kind of heading off that problem because you've got this trend towards more of an NFL model by college football, but yet the regular season's still pretty dominant TV viewership-wise in the NFL. So what can the college minds do to make sure this regular season isn't an afterthought?
Well, I think if you see, if you look at the NFL model, those games between two powerhouses during the season, everybody gets fired up about them, but in the end, it may not make any difference.
Sure.
So, maybe that's the way it's going to look. Maybe I don't think we're at the basketball situation yet. I think we're somewhere in between. Mm-hmm. And so I guess we just have to look at it and watch it and observe it and see how it can be tweaked. But I know Petiti's issue, and we talked about it last week, is why don't you schedule some of those really, top-notch team, Penn State playing Michigan early instead of late, or some of the others cross rivals, play them early rather than late. That brings more attention early on. But you know what? Right now, Chris, when college football starts, everybody's fired up, and they are fired up till the very end. So we've got a good thing going. Let's don't lose this momentum. But I can see why everybody's looking at it and trying to increase it and keep it up because it's such a good thing right now.
Gary Barnett, couple minutes with us, Hail Varsity Radio. Coach, I sent you a clip, and this was Shannon Sharp's podcast. What's your reaction to Johnny Football? His dad offered $3 million for 2 extra years at A&M. Johnny went into the topic of bagmen in college football. What's your reaction to that video clip?
Well, unfortunately, there was two things stood out to me. One is that Kevin Sumlin didn't submit to it, and is sort of criticized in that clip for not submitting to paying Johnny $3 million over 2 years and not paying Cliff Kingsbury a higher salary. They sort of really criticized Kevin for making those decisions, and I looked at it and said, the guy stood up. He stood up and didn't do the wrong thing. And yet now that would be the wrong thing. I mean, it's crazy. The Bagman deal, I'm sorry, but it probably did happen in the Southeastern Conference and a couple other places more than any of us thought. I can honestly tell you that my experience with that kind of stuff and running into it was so minimal. I mean, I could count on one hand the number of times, not even, maybe two fingers, the number of times that I actually knew that somebody in the SEC was cheating. And that's everybody. It must be rampant, and I missed it. I must have had my head in the sand. I don't know, but it seems to be just general knowledge for everybody but me.
Does that tick you off, though, in those instances where you're in on a kid and you know that it'd be great for both parties, but you just got no shot?
Well, what ticked me off is it was a friend of mine that was on the staff in the place that we were competing on a kid with, and the kid we were going to get the young man, and then all of a sudden we weren't going to get the young man, and I called him and I said, Joe, all right, what happened? And he just says, you know how it is down here. He says, we have different ways to do these things. And in this case, they were going to fly his parents to all the games, which he said, that's really not a big expense for us, and it's not one of our bigger
investments,
bigger ones. I'm going, well, this guy's everything to me, and he's not very big to you, and you're flying his parents back and forth. And so, I ran into that almost same scenario twice, and that was it. Actually, there's things I suspicioned every time LSU. I was competing against LSU, and the last weekend they'd all go to LSU, all those guys in Louisiana, and I always jokes about they got new furniture and that kind of stuff. But I don't think I actually saw it. I could probably spread that rumor too, but I don't know that I actually saw. But this one I actually experienced. So.
Well, was it bad in the Big 8?
Not that I know of.
Yeah.
I never felt that way.
Okay.
I never did. I mean, I don't know, but maybe it's because we were so far from it.
Sure.
That I forgot who it was. The old coach at Georgia Southern. He says, "We don't cheat. You need money to cheat, and you got no money." That's sort of the way we were in Colorado.
Gary Barnett's with us, Hail Varsity Radio. Coach, last thought, it's National Margarita Day. There's a restaurant that is charging $1,250 for a margarita, but it's vintage Don Julio 1942. Are you a big margarita guy? If so, salt, blended, rocks, are you going to celebrate National Margarita Day?
No, and no. Not a margarita guy. Not going to celebrate it. I am going to dinner tonight in a nice Mexican restaurant. So there will be one consumed, but it won't be by me.
Okay. What's your go-to in the Mexican restaurant? Are you a burrito, an enchilada? Are you a fajita guy? What's your order?
There's two things I really like. There's a guacamole tostada that I really like.
Nice.
And then I'm pretty much a burrito and chicken enchilada guy.
Okay,
so.
Those are solid. Enjoy dinner tonight, Coach. Thanks for a few minutes.
All right, Chris. Great being with you.
The guac for the win, and no margarita for Barney tonight.
Missing out.
He is. We'll catch up. Bill Bender, Sporting News. He's doing brackets, men's and women's. Where's Nebraska fall in with him?
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back into it at Hail Varsity, powered by Cornhead Lager. Time to talk some college football and some NCAA hoops. Bill Bender with us from the Sporting News at Bill Bender 92 is where you can find him on Twitter. You see him around with national radio shows as well. Bill, 'tis the season. It is March. A lot of spring footballs on the doorstep. How are you doing?
Good to hear from you, and it means we're inching closer to spring football. I hope you're well, and thanks for having me on.
Well, appreciate you and your undertaking not only the women's but the men's bracket as Bill Bender and Sporting News Bracketology. We're smiling in Lincoln specifically, but a lot of Nebraska with that hard-to-find road win for Nebraska. I want to start there before we zoom out on the Big Ten. As you've looked at Nebraska's resume for the dance, what's your impressions of Coach Hoiberg and this squad?
Yeah, they've done well, and they're hanging in there, and they've got a chance to really get in the tournament, which is good. The mid-tier of the Big Ten isn't what it normally is. I think there'll be fewer berths than usual, and that's one thing to keep in mind. But Nebraska's sitting there, both men's and women's, got a really good chance to double up. There aren't a lot of schools. When I do the men's and women's, I got to be careful not to mess up the records, but they're both doing well.
Nebraska's now at 19 wins, 9-7 in conference. They've jumped a little bit in the net and a little bit in KenPom with last night's win at Indiana. What's your take? What's your reasoning, not only as you look at the Big Ten, but just around college basketball with road struggles? And we've not just seen your normal, top 25 teams. We've seen number one go down quite a bit, and twice in the state of Nebraska. Just recently, UConn against Creighton, and of course Nebraska knocking off Purdue.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the last couple days even, it's been wild. You see Ohio State, coach, go out and beat Purdue. You see UConn get routed. Houston's tough, but, I think that's more of a tournament question with them. You always ask the same old question about them once they get in the tournament because of their style and how they like to muddy the game up a little bit. And then, I'm going to tell you who I like, and I like UConn a lot. And I know they're not this other team. I know they're not a one seed, but, man, North Carolina, if you get them in the tournament with that inside-outside combination of scoring and the talent that they have around Armando, who's a double-double guy every time, that translates in the tournament. They're the team. I know they're not a one seed. I know we get caught up on KenPom and road wins and those kind of things. They're really dangerous, in my opinion.
It's Bill Bender with us here on Hail Varsity Radio talking some NCAA tournament. And Bill, it's been making the rounds on social media recently, the trapezoid of excellence. Have you seen this? Do you believe in it?
I don't know what is it? You're going to have to help me on that one.
It's teams that are producing a high net rating and do not go too fast or too slow offensively. So you have a pretty middle of the road in terms of pace offense with a high net rating. Apparently, that teams that go and win the NCAA tournament tend to, and I'm thinking like 9 out of the past 10 years, fall into that trapezoid of excellence.
I like it. I'm going to have to go take a look when I get off the air here. Obviously, I see why that matters. You want to dictate the pace of a game and have high offense and defense. And I just mentioned Houston as that defensive team. And I know, who do we talk about every year? Gonzaga is probably the other way, right? That they like to push and try to beat you to 90, and they haven't quite won it. So there may be something to that line of thinking, and I'll have to take a closer look.
Yeah, currently as it stands, Houston, this comes today, it's from Ryan Hammer on Twitter. Houston is in the trapezoid of excellence, but they're almost moving too slow offensively. You look at other teams currently in the trapezoid of excellence: Baylor, UConn, Creighton, Iowa State, Purdue, Auburn, Tennessee, and Illinois is right on that line of the trapezoid of excellence.
It could be. Those are all, depending on the draw, championship caliber teams. I know with Purdue, and I know I can circle back to the Big Ten with Purdue, their pressure won't start till their first tournament game, if we're being honest about it. I don't even think the regular season truly matters for them, other than, you know what I mean. Right. And then in the Big Ten tournament. But once they get in that first tournament game, and I was there last year when FDU beat them, I know about their tournament struggles the last few years, and the pressure to perform with Zach Edey and the guys around him is going to be very intense for the Boilermakers. But by what you just said, yes, they should profile like a national championship team, but yes, that miraculously hasn't been to the Final Four since 1980.
Bill Bender's with us, Sporting News, a little bracketology with Bill at BillBender92 on Twitter. He is doing bracketology for the men's and women's, and each week he'll have projections for you as we march towards March. What's your take on Creighton? The Jays were so close to a Final Four last year, a great Elite Eight run. There's been some smoke around Coach Mack, maybe with the Ohio State opening. All that being said, man, did they show up and just shoot lights out at CHI this week against UConn. But big picture with Creighton, what do you see their path being here? I know draw is key, but how far do you think this Creighton team can go? Can they equal last year? Do they have the talent?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. And then with the balance they have in scoring, that win, what did I have them at this week? Low 4, but they'll jump up. You know, they have 3 players that average 17 or more a game. I always like that. I always look at these top 16 seeds or so. I kind of see how they distribute their scoring. That means more than one guy can beat you. And I really like that about them. And they did make that run last year, learn from that run, really easily could have won that game last year that they got knocked out. So I think Creighton will be in that discussion. And when you can put one on UConn like they did the other night, that shows that it could happen for them. Are they in the trapezoid of excellence? I'm sorry, you reeled off so many teams so fast
They are.
I can't remember.
UConn is in the trapezoid of excellence, and Creighton is just barely in as well. They're kind of similar to Duke, according to this metric.
I don't know if Creighton fans will love that comparison or not. Well, they're a lot like Duke. So are you buying or selling Kansas? And I love Tennessee. I love how dynamic they are, but I love how hard they play. They're talented, or as talented as some of the big dogs they've taken on, Bill, but they just outwork teams. And sometimes that's a missing component with some teams that are super talented.
There are a lot of scars for me with filling out brackets in Kansas, so I can never tell you what to do with them. I know I had them winning it all last year, and my Sporting News bracket that I always turn in at the end of the year or at the beginning of March Madness has been habitually a disaster, and I deserve my readers deserve an apology. But I think they'll be battle tested. A lot of those Big 12 teams that showed up last year, and they should be pretty good as they get into March. What was the back half of the question? Sorry, I got all those Kansas scars came up.
No, you just take a minute to inhale and exhale when we talk KU in the tournament. Tennessee, I love how hard they play to be married with that talent they have.
And there's some frontline SEC teams worth watching, Tennessee. I like Alabama a little more. Mm-hmm. You look at their net Ken-Pom combination. I know they played Tennessee, didn't go well, but they get another game with them. And Auburn's also playing well. And for me, when I look at the SEC, and I'm guilty of this as anybody, I start with Kentucky. Mm-hmm. I don't care what their record is. I know when they got their talent going, you saw what they did against Auburn last weekend. John Calipari, he finds ways, and they've had ups and downs in March, but I think this is a particularly big year for them in terms of what direction they're going under Cal, and that's finally become a little bit of a question at least.
It's Bill Bender with us here from the Sporting News, Hail Varsity Radio. And Bill, let's turn specifically towards Nebraska. And the stat that always gets brought up around here, I don't know if it comes up in national media, Nebraska is still the only major conference team that has yet to win a game in the NCAA tournament. They're hoping to get that flipped this season. Does that mean anything to you from the outside looking in that Nebraska still has yet to win a tourney game?
They're the only team that hasn't? Is that true?
Among the major conferences, yes.
Yes.
The major basketball conferences.
Well, I mean, then that can work in your favor in some ways. I go back to Northwestern a few years ago. I mean, the entire country rallied around them a little bit, right? So
it was Northwestern and Nebraska until that little run.
Right, and then Nebraska or Northwestern obviously won that game. But again, with Nebraska, four guys that are averaging double figures, 3 guys that average 5 rebounds or more. Those are things that I look at. I know it's not like an advanced metric by any means, but I'm a simple basketball guy. I look at things like that. I'm like, yeah, you got some guys that can put it in the net. You catch the right draw, they ought to win a game. And I do. Once that stat gets a little more attention in March, people will rally around them a little bit. I think they were, man, my memory's fried right now, but were they close in the COVID year there, or was that Rutgers? I think Rutgers was the team that was trying to get in the tournament, but COVID cut it short.
Yeah, Rutgers got hosed. Nebraska won 23 games, finished fourth in the Big Ten, 2017, 2018, and it was an NIT trip to Mississippi State. So Tim Miles' second to last year was not good because the Big Ten was down. But it's been a decade. It's been a decade since Nebraska's been dancing, and Nebraska fans are hungry for it. A little bit more with our friends, Sporting News. And, Steve writes in here on the stream, and it's a fair question here. Maybe the Big Ten middle is better than you think. Many can beat anyone on their home floor, and that's where do you side? Are you wowed by your conference's top teams and their road record, or does it say more about your league if your top dogs go to, a team that's been in last place a lot of the season, Ohio State, and get popped? I mean, it's what side of the fence you're on. Bill Bender continues with us here.
It is a good question. I mean, like the SEC is probably getting 8-9. Is the SEC the best conference in the country? The Big 12 still holds a good record?
They've killed one another.
How about the Mountain West?
Big 12.
Big 12's probably the top, yeah. And then SEC's right there. I think the Big 10 is down for sure. I mean, I guess the one slide I think looks really bad is how poor Wisconsin has played down the stretch. Because they could have been a 2 seed for you. Illinois, for them to be up 10 with 2.5 left and to slog that away last night at Penn State's kind of a joke. And Northwestern's been pretty solid. But, yeah, that middle Big Ten, Minnesota, I want to see if maybe beyond Nebraska. I think Nebraska and Northwestern are kind of your final two with the league. We'll have some more thoughts with Bill Bender. We'll get to some college football. Danny Burke is with us also next segment.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Bill Bender with us from the Sporting News at Bill Bender 92 is where you can find him on Twitter. You see him around with national radio shows as well. Bill, to college football we go. Thoughts? I know you're way too early. Top 25 is out. Do you like what college football's done with this 7+5?
I have some thoughts out there on it now and more directed at the conversation that was popping up about possibly going to 14 teams. I think that would be a disaster if you don't watch the 12-team playoff first. Mm-hmm. And there's so many unanswered questions with this for me. Like, one, how much of the Big Ten and SEC going to dominate it? What value do the conference championship games have now? Questions like that. Is 12 teams too many? It's a good thing we're talking basketball, Chris, because here's a stat for you. You look at the college football playoff semifinals over the last 10 years. The average margin of victory in those games was 17.8 points per game. 17.8. You look at the NCAA tournament games last year involving number 1 and number 2 seeds, and it was less. It was 17.2 points per game. So here's my theory, and you guys can run with this all you want. I think it's more likely for a 2 seed to lose to a 15 seed in the college basketball tournament than it will be for a 12 seed to beat a 5 seed in the football tournament.
Totally agree. You've got your top 3 to top 5 as we sit right now, and then there's a gap. Even from 5 to 8, there's a gap.
But the thing I look at on the other side of that is, on one hand, you have Liberty versus Oregon in the Fiesta Bowl this year, which was
How'd that go close. For you?
Not well. I didn't make it to the games.
Right.
So thank God for me.
He said, I'm good.
But then you also have Tulane against USC a couple years ago where
fun.
Tulane pulls it off. You have UCF against Auburn in the Sugar Bowl a couple years ago as well. There's been times in this college football playoff era, and maybe the playoff expansion 12 changes it with more on the line for these teams that are higher rated. But you've seen these teams from the group of 5, quote-unquote, conferences that have been able to go sting pretty good teams that, moving forward, would likely be in the college football playoff.
Okay, so here's another dirty secret, guys. Cinderella, and you're talking about it. These next 2 years with the group of 5 are going to be watched more closely than ever because of what you just said in some ways. Here's the dirty secret. Houston, UCF, Cincinnati, all those Group of 5 darlings of the last 10 years, what did they do? They went to the Big 12. They leveled up. And Cinderella looks to level up. Cinderella doesn't want to be Cinderella forever. And I think that's another thing. If in the next 2 years, if we have two playoff games that resemble what we watched with Oregon and Liberty, there will be a push to push them out.
Mm-hmm.
You're already kind of seeing it now, and I think that absolutely could become a thing, especially with the SEC and the Big Ten, because they're going to get 70% of the at-large bids. What's going to stop those two conferences from wanting more?
Sure. Well, and to your point, Elijah, great point with UCF and Auburn. We're all cheering Frosty, right? Great win. They went unbeaten. And this is not to take away from that win, but it was also 8-4 Auburn that really probably didn't give a damn about the Peach Bowl.
Yeah. And that's what I'm saying with maybe with more on the line in college football playoff, this changes.
Yeah, and and to Bill's point, 17.8.
Yeah, we just published the article. I'll send it to you, Chris. It kind of details some of these questions that I have because I'm just not. I think we skipped a step. I think we should have gone to 8 because I think 4 to 12 is pretty dramatic. And there's a lot of things going on in college football right now. You and I have talked about them over the years. It's just you're asking yourself for disaster. I mentioned those margins of victory. Here's the difference between the NCAA tournament and the college football playoff. When Kansas is beating Monmouth by 30, we can just flip to another game.
Right.
When Oregon's beating Liberty like that, we're going to be stuck with that game for 4 hours. Be a lot of complaints when it happens.
It's time to start betting the ponies at the sports book, Elijah.
Some of us will flip over to the new NCAA football game and try to get an alternate reality.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
It's Bill Binder with us here. And Bill, you and Paul Meyerberg both came on this show and said Husker fans are going to love this hire of Matt Rule. There was some doubt in Husker Nation at the time. You turned out to be right. Husker fans have loved the Matt Rule hire, and they're in love with him right now. And I want to get your outside perspective. Has he exceeded expectations through this first 15 months? Has he met them? Has he fallen short? Where are you at with what Matt Rule has put on paper so far?
Good. It met expectations, you would say, with leaning toward it'll come down to recruiting and to be able to land Raiola. And like I said, there are guys that make it easy when you're at the press conference where you're like, man, I like that guy. I want to root for him. Mm-hmm. And when reporters we're like that, right? But it doesn't always, sometimes that coach will out. I think in this case, it's going to pan out. And just the passion he spoke about coaching at Nebraska and wanting to be there and being a football junkie. He's the type of guy that I would enjoy sitting down with, much like you guys. I wish our segments were forever. I could sit with Matt Rule and talk football for 3 hours, and I think I'd be really happy.
He'd probably let you. Bill Bender, Sporting News at Bill Bender 92. Bill, we'll talk closer to Selection Sunday. You take care, and thanks for a few minutes.
Hey, no problem. Thanks for having me on.
Good to talk some college basketball. Let's dive to the sports book. Danny Burke with us, Burke's Best Bets, Burke'sBeat.com. Daddy, we're a little tardy here. Forgive us as we wrapped up with Bill, but how are you feeling here? Do you have a good handle on some college action this weekend or some NBA? What are you looking at?
Yeah, we got the NBA back in the mix. You know, we're celebrating the Huskers hanging on to get their first road win yesterday, so can't complain in terms of the hardwood. Hopefully we can make it a little bit better tonight. But, I got a couple plays in the NBA this evening. I can dish out one of them right now. I know we're about to hit a break really quick, but in the one game, well, actually, it's in the same game, but I did bet a total for Utah and Charlotte, guys. I mean, look, the adage could be that after the All-Star break, a lot of these players are a little bit slow to get acclimated back into things, maybe a tad lackadaisical. I think this game could be the exception, though, because you have two horrible defenses going after it. The Jazz 25th in defense and points per possession and effective field goal percentage. You look at the Hornets, and they're dead last in both of those categories and half-court defense. Both of these defenses really struggle at defending the perimeter. What was odd to see was this total move from 232 down to 228.5, and I think it could be because of the line of thinking, as I was mentioning, coming back from the All-Star break. But look, a lot of these new role players implemented into this Hornets team trying to prove themselves, trying to play hard. So I think they'll be able to have success against a weak defense in Utah, and the Jazz, terrible defensively, and offensively they play tremendously better at home. They should be able to take advantage against a weaker Hornets defense. So I played over 228.5 for that matchup tonight.
And this is just a quick aside. It's insane to me the trend of the NBA now, where you look at 228 points and say over. Yeah, that's not that many points at all. Like that's just the trend of the NBA recently, and that's mind-boggling to me that you look at both teams having 114 points and you say, yep, that's an easy over.
Danny, we'll get your other play here on the other side, but real quick, about 20 seconds, tell folks about Danny Burke and Burke'sBeat.com.
Yeah, like you said, Burke'sBeat.com, the website, dishing out content left and right. Mostly write-ups is where you can find all of that type of stuff there, covering all the major sports. Baseball will be coming soon. In the thick of it with NBA right now, which is also what I covered on my latest episode. My podcast called Burke's Beat, available on Apple and Spotify. Big discussion into the futures department. Very highly recommend you listen if you want to get more into the NBA and look for some longer shot plays.
Hang tight, Daddy. Back with us here to wind down a Thursday.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Danny Burke is with us, Burke'sBeat.com, the pride of Chicago at Danny Burke 5. Danny, buddy Jeff, the pharmacist, wants me to go see Pearl Jam in May. Can you pick me a winner this weekend, a lock for college basketball? Maybe. Well, I can't bet here for Sunday, Nebraska, Minnesota.
And we were talking in the commercial break, Danny. This concert is in the MGM Grand Arena, and I'm thinking Schmidt needs to at least catch one event there.
Yeah, Schmidt's got to get himself. Schmidt, you haven't been to Vegas yet still, right? You got to make the trek out there?
I have not. I need you to go with me. I need the pride of Fairbury, Bill Dolman, to go with me, and we need to beat our old buddy Tony George there. That way,
it's all right. I don't want to go.
You're coming too. But if I don't come back, it's a party. We're all going. But if I don't come back alive, my wife will no doubt tip all of you. So, but back to some winners. Props have been nice. Is there a team you've been smiling about with college basketball here? We got a couple of minutes yet.
Yeah, well, first of all, count me in for that Vegas trip. Absolutely down. I know we'd have a blast, and I would be honored to be there the first time you go, Schmitty. But, look, I mean, this Nebraska-Minnesota game on Sunday is going to be awesome because Minnesota, as we know, it's becoming more and more public about just how dominant this team has been against the spread. But now it's like an immovable force versus, whatever the whole saying is, going up against each other with Nebraska at home. I mean, which one is going to overcome the other? And you got to give the edge to Nebraska here because Nebraska losing that matchup on the road against Minnesota earlier this year, that is something in the back of their minds. Also knowing this is a win you have to have. Nebraska, I don't know what they're going to make them with the early lines. I would imagine they're going to be probably I don't want to say a small favorite, probably bigger than a smaller favorite, despite Minnesota being so good against the number. But look, if you get Nebraska under 4, which again, I'm not ingrained fully into college basketball this season, so I'm not going to sit here and try to make the number and act like I know what it's going to be. But I would think that if it's something under 4 that you would have to lay with Nebraska, that could be a viable way to look to back them. Or again, as I always say on here, I mean, basketball's so volatile, especially in college basketball, you're probably going to get a better number with them. But look, honestly, I think the Huskers are set up for success this Sunday. I think they take down the top ATS team in the Gophers.
That'd be nice for Nebraska fans.
That would be, Danny. And Danny, before we get you out of here, I need to get your thoughts. Love the college basketball, love the NBA. In this month between football ending and the NCAA tournament getting going, are there any weird sports that you like to bet on with our last about 45 seconds here?
I don't really stray too far outside of the major sports.
You don't like losing honestly, money. I get it.
Like, would it really get slow, maybe a little bit of tennis just based on the fact that some of my friends follow some people they respect, and, I'll occasionally throw a tennis play. What I will say, actually, another one would be I'm slowly getting into golf right now, and then UFC, once you get these bigger cards, that's where I try to delve into as well. That's always a good one. And I know you're a big UFC guy too, Elijah, so Can't skip out on that on Saturday.
Yeah, we'll have to collaborate. My roommate hit his parlay this weekend with my advice, so that's all I'm saying.
Danny will have.
Well, there's your ticket to Vegas. Then you already got yourself set up. Danny, and I just need to cover ourselves.
Yeah, Danny will have the chariot race picks for you on the next Burke's Bets at Danny Burke 5. Danny, thanks for squeezing us in. We'll talk some college football. We'll talk some MLB next week. All right.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, sounds like a plan, fellas. Always appreciate it.
All right, good stuff from Danny Burke. Spotify, iTunes, Google Play. Get the podcast to Hail Varsity. Subscribe and like YouTube, Hail Varsity YouTube. Thanks to Elijah Herbel. Thanks to Connor Clark, Chris Schmidt. Back tomorrow at 4. We'll be live at Southwest with Hail Varsity, a road show.